Hey guys, what's up? Today on Rebels Off-Road, I am going to be showing you the driveline upgrades that I'm going to be doing and giving a little comparison of the stock parts that I'll be replacing and what my thoughts on driveline upgrades in general for the KRX are. So, without further ado, let's get into this video. So basically, Kawasaki did a really good job of designing this driveline on the Kawasaki KRX.
Where's the beef?
Their axle shafts are super beefy. Their diffs are super beefy. Their drive shafts, not as beefy, but still pretty darn beefy. But, let's put a big but there.
I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
There are some built-in fuses, let's say, that Kawasaki put into the machines. And so the first one, which I don't think was an intentional fuse, is this stock drive shaft. So what a lot of people are finding is that this little spline portion right here, the splines are actually bigger than this shaft section, so it breaks off right here, and then you're basically left stranded. You have to pull the drive line, and that is pretty difficult to do on a KRX. You got to pull the diff, which takes a little bit of effort, and actually remove the drive shaft, you actually have to pull the diff completely out of the machine. If you have a winch there, you have to pull that winch, and to pull the winch and the diff out, you have to remove the shocks and the A-arms and disconnect the ball joints and the steering ends, and there's just a lot to do with it. So if you can help it, do not have a drive shaft that is the weak link. Then the other weak link Kawasaki has is on the differential, and that is this little stub shaft here. And as you can see, it necks down right around there, and so when the drive shaft is in there, that is supposed to be a fuse. And it's super simple to change this out. There's these 4 bolts. You don't have to pull the whole diff. You can just slide it forward and access those 4 bolts. The whole thing comes off, this plate comes off, and then you can replace just this part or the whole entire assembly there. And that's a cheap way of protecting the diff, because those things are about like $100 for the whole deal with the faceplate and everything. And it's fairly easy to change out on the trail. So that is a good designed fuse there. And then finally, the third weak link or potential weak link is this stub shaft. And this part goes into the transmission. It's also difficult to get at. It's a little easier than the drive shaft to replace out on the trail, because you don't actually have to remove the drive shaft. You can just slide it forward and out of the way a little bit, and this should come out. However, this leaves a little bit to be desired. It necks down here and it necks up there, so it's not the best, strongest piece there. It's about the same size as this shaft here. And then the carrier bearing here, it's this, cast aluminum carrier, and then the bearings in here are not sealed bearings. It has this dust shield here, which keeps some of the dirt out, but what you find is, I don't know if you can hear it, there's a lot of resistance in it. So when you do mud riding or you get wet and dirt and dust and stuff up in there, those bearings end up failing. So if this shaft lets go, or this bearing lets go and then the shaft lets go, it can potentially damage the transmission, because it's directly underneath the transmission. There's no protection above it, and when it shatters, it can send pieces of shrapnel up through the transmission. So you don't want this one to fail. So then that takes me to the final thing that I do not want to have to replace out on the trail, and that is the differential. And so there's a couple things on the differential that can go wrong, and so I'm going to be addressing all of them. The first one is the diff lock gear. It's pretty strong. Honestly, I tested it out when I replaced it.
Let's see if we can break this thing.
That did break it. Still pretty impressive for the stock gear, honestly. The gear actually dented my hammer there. as you can see, it can take a pretty big beating. However, it is not the strongest thing out there. And then the final thing on the diff that is kind of a weak point that sometimes there's failures is this spider gear pin. And this is the stock one. I've already gone ahead and replaced it with the Brute Performance one. However, this pin apparently is not a hardened shaft, and so this material can bend is what it allegedly is. We're gonna test it out right now. Once again, chuck it up in the vise and we'll hit it with a hammer. We're gonna use this rubber mallet first just to test out to see how easily it bends. The rubber mallet will absorb some of the shock, and so we'll really get a good idea. If this bends it, then we know it's a defective piece.
How scientific.
Well, right there, you can see the vise actually put a pretty good imprint in it. So that's already telling me it's not really hardened steel. If it was hardened steel, this would not want to, you know, gouge out like that. We're gonna put it in our press now and see how much effort it takes to bend. We have this 20-ton shop press here, and we're gonna see how much effort it takes this to bend. So now it's contacting, and now we are starting to put some pressure on it. See it start to deform there a little bit. It does appear to be bending already. Let's go ahead and release the pressure, see if it has any permanent deformation already. So you can see there, it's already bent. And that little bit of bend in it will actually, you know, affect the gear mesh. I don't know how many pounds of force, but it's not a whole lot. And when this bends, it can mess with the gear mesh and cause the, you know, differential to be damaged and be immobilized. So I'm glad I went ahead and got one of the hardened shafts from Brute Performance and got that installed in my rig. That's one less thing I have to worry about for the Driveline, and we can focus on having appropriate weak links and fuses. So I say all of that to say, I want the fuse to be the easiest to change out on the trail and to be the least expensive. I'm gonna go with changing out this guy out on the trail. It's a $100 part. You can carry a spare one in the glove compartment. It's not a big deal to change. So I will beef up all of these other parts to ensure that I don't have to change those out on the trail. A lot of the aftermarket has upgraded these carrier bearings for a lot of different machines, and the Kawasaki KRX is one of those machines that there's a couple different options for. Full Access makes one, Brute Performance makes one. There's like side-by-side bushings, or a couple other ones make these as well. And there's a couple different options for them for that carrier bearing. And then also there's a few options for this shaft. I got a new carrier bearing and shaft from Full Access UTV. I liked the price point on it. I think Brute Performance has a bigger one, but it doesn't really buy you a lot because it necks down around the splines, and so anything above the splines isn't really adding any strength, because, you know, if it necks down to the splines, it's always going to shear off at the splines. So having a thicker shaft here doesn't really do anything except ensure it always will break right here, which doesn't really gain you anything. So upgraded shaft, you want a different material than this. This is just regular hardened steel, but you go to a chromoly shaft such as this one. The Brute Performance one is also a chromoly, I believe, so that one's a good option. Basically, let me show you what I have here. What you have is a thicker shaft. They're actually just about the same thickness as the outer portion of the splines, which is pretty ideal. It also has this necking portion, so it allows some twist. And then this portion here is precisely machined to fit their carrier bearing. And the carrier bearing has upgraded Timken bearings that are sealed, and it also has seals on either side of it. It's a much nicer piece. It's also machined billet aluminum, and so that's already a stronger piece there. So that's what we're going to do to upgrade this, to ensure that this doesn't explode and damage the transmission, and also the bearings will last a lot longer. So The next thing we don't want to change out on the trail is the drive shaft, like I mentioned. So I think Brute Performance has the biggest, baddest, strongest drive shaft out there. However, it's very expensive and also seems to never be in stock. I could probably call them and get on a wait list and all of that stuff, but I really didn't want the hassle, and it was much more expensive than this option. And so this is what I'm going with, and I'll show you what it looks like while I unbox it. So it is the Super ATV Rhino Driveline Bounty Series. This is the drive shaft. Comes pretty nice package. It is a lot heavier than the stock one. I believe it has a warranty on it. I'll put that up, the warranty, but it comes in this bubble wrap. Slide the protection off of this shaft here. It's kind of dirty. All right, so let's throw this up on the bench, make some room for it to show you. This drive line is chromoly also, and it's I think 1/8 of an inch thick. I'm not sure what the thickness of the stock one is, but it's less than that for sure. And this whole spine area is uniform thickness with the splines, so there's no real big neck down there, if you can see that. So that's inherently stronger, and it's a stronger material, so it won't break there as easily. And same thing on this side. There's not really a neck down there. This is much stronger section, and the overall shaft is stronger because it is a thicker, better material. So that's what I went with for the drive shaft. Like I said, probably would have gone with Brute Performance, except that they are much more expensive. I think that is the best drive shaft out there as far as the Ultimate goes. However, if you keep the fuse, the input shaft on the differential, I don't think the drive shaft's gonna break, especially with this little bit upgraded drive shaft from Super ATV Rhino Driveline. And so I went ahead and replaced that diff gear with the Brute Performance one, which is a much harder steel and is supposed to be a lot nicer and stronger steel. Obviously, I'm not gonna be abusing it like I did the stock one. I just wanted to see how strong the stock one really is. Probably for most of you, you don't need to upgrade this diff gear. But if you already have it apart, or if you beat on your machine a lot and you just want that extra reassurance, you might as well go ahead and do it. Also, the spider gear pin, while I think that's a great update, it does take quite a bit of effort to get at. So if you have your diff out already, go ahead and replace that. I think it's like a $30 or $40 part, and it's a nice piece. So if you already have your diff out, go ahead and replace that. It would be my recommendation. It's cheap, it's good reassurance. So one final driveline update I did do was at the suggestion of JBS Performance. James over there did this one, and I wanted to show you. Basically, I don't know if you can see it, but I cut a little slit in the yoke here for the drive shaft, and that is to allow this bolt to compress down and eliminate any slop in those splines. And so as you can see, it's nice and tight there, and no slop. He had been running this mod for, I don't know, about a year now, and he wasn't having any issues with it. I thought it was a good idea. Consider that one's a free one. You can do that with a cutoff wheel is what I did, and you just slit straight down between those bolts. Then you got a nice tight joint there, and there's no slop with the splines. All right, so that's my recommended driveline upgrades. If you beat on your machine, you might want to do some of these ones. The logic of beefing up everything sometimes doesn't end up working. You just move your weak link down the line to something more expensive. Keeping the least expensive, easiest thing to change out on the trail is the method that I'm gonna go for. It's much better than having to change out like differential gears or transmission gears. If you beef up the whole entire driveline, you move all that weak links to stuff that's much more expensive, like a transmission. And I don't want to tear apart my machine to be rebuilding a transmission. That just is not what I want to spend my time doing. I'd rather be on the trail or making entertaining videos like this for you. Do me a huge favor, smash that like button if you found this video helpful, and subscribe for more great content. We also have a giveaway going on right now. you want to check out, I'll post a link down in the description. We're having a giveaway at 1,500 subscribers, so you want to get in on that really quick because we're coming up on that fast. And you know, we have a bunch of great products that we're going to be doing reviews on and giveaways up here really soon. I'm super excited about the one we're going to be doing at 2,000 subscribers, but the faster we get there, the sooner we can give away these great products. So do us a favor, smash that like button and subscribe, and we will see you next time.